Hey everyone, thank you for joining me here on this video where I'm going to do a lab with the objective of the DevNet associate, just taking out one objective where we need to list out network devices from Cisco DNA Center. Now, I haven't had a lot of experience with DNA Center or any experience at all, just through the lab environment, but Cisco calls this their network management and command center for Cisco DNA, which is their intent-based network for enterprises. And what I'm going to do here is share my screen just to show you DNA Center, because it is part of the DevNet associate objectives is understanding how you interface with DNA Center's APIs in order to do certain things. So some of the features that you get with DNA Center are policy, where you can build a security around what you do with your users and your devices. A lot of automation in deployment and also the management of your network devices. Maybe it's also integrating different applications with DNA Center. There's assurance, which has to do with analytics, the buzzwords of AI and ML, and then we have security. Now, in our case, in this lab, what I'm going to do is go to this Cisco DNA Center platform overview, which has the reference to the API. Because what we want to do is build out a Python script that will give us a list of the network devices from Cisco DNA Center. You do have to understand what are the components of DNA Center as it pertains to the APIs, how to find the necessary documentation that leads you to what you need to use in order to put your script together. So here is the URL for this API documentation, and you can see here on the left side, it kind of gives you an overview of with the navigation of what DNA Center is and how we should use it. The thing to note here is you have APIs and adapters or integration APIs and also webhooks. In this video, I'm really just going to focus on the intent API and putting that into a script, a Python script. And putting this together, I'm going to take some of the things that I've done in my previous DevNet videos, which is going to use Postman in order to interface with the API, and then putting together the script with my with Atom, my application that I'm going to use, my text editor, to build the script. So the intent API is northbound, which exposes specific capabilities of the Cisco DNA Center platform. And a lot of that is RESTful API usage. So we're going to do a GET request and a POST request in order to get JSON structures, a JSON response from the DNA Center platform. So you can tell I don't use Cisco DNA Center. I don't know if I ever will. I haven't ran into any client environments that actually use DNA Center, but for the DevNet associate, you have to understand how to interface with DNA Center, right? So the one thing to know with DNA Center is the authentication method in order to use the API. And so it uses a token. It's token-based authentication. Now, if you want to try this out for yourself, because you might be thinking, you know what, Roel, I don't have access to Cisco DNA Center. How am I going to practice this lab, or how am I going to try any of this? Well, if you head over to developer.cisco.com, there are labs that you can use that is part of the DevNet community. And so part of this too is there is an always on lab for DNA Center. And that's what I'm going to use in this video to build out the script. When you're going through this, you do have to find the documentation, and then you have to find exactly what API needs to be used. And so that's why I just did a search on developer.cisco.com for Cisco DNA Center, and I was able to get to this document here. And on the left navigation, I have this API, intent API that I want to look at. Right away, we see that there is an authentication that needs to be done in order to get your access token. That access token is going to be used for all your subsequent queries, your GET requests, any POST requests. So that's what we're going to use. We need to get our authentication token. So let's see if we can get this to work. And it's telling me that this is the URL string. All right, so since I am going to be using the Cisco DevNet always on lab, we have to know what host we need to apply this to. So why don't I show that to you? All right, so if you head over to developer.cisco.com and head over to the sandbox, you can go down to networking, where you will find a list of different sandboxes. If you scroll down, you will find the Cisco Digital Network Architecture DNA Center. That is the one we want to try out. So I have that open in another tab here. This is the lab which requires no reservations at all. So if you scroll down on this left side right here, we can see that there is a sandbox access. That is what we need. So this is the host that we are going to use, and then these are the credentials to log in. With this information, I will take this host here, head over to Postman, where I want to get my token. All right, so to get my token, I've got this window open here. And if we remember that the API documentation said in order to get your access token, you need to put a post request. I believe it's a post request. So if I head back over to the web browser and to my API documentation, it is here a post request. And here is the URL in order to obtain the API, an access token to use the API, which is going to be used, that access token is going to be used in the header as this field here, XAuth token. So let's go ahead and obtain our access token. I will copy this string there and add it to the end of that. I don't know why I did that. There you go. All right. So that is the URL that we need to create. You can see this is the actual host here. And then the API says we need to go to DNA/system/API version 1. And we're looking at auth/token. All right. So the next thing that we need to look at is we actually need to have some sort of some headers here, I believe, in order to query this. Because if I were to hit send right now, that's not going to work because authentication has failed. There have been no credentials provided. The reason why the authentication failed is because we have to pass some credentials in order to get that access token. So we can find this in the DevNet lab. And so here I have a tab open for developer.cisco.com/site/dnac-101. In here, it does have what we need to add in the header. So we need to add the header for key authorization. So here under headers, for the key, we'll do authorization, and we'll grab this value here, which is going to give us this access. So now that I have there the authentication in the header, I will click on send in Postman. It's sending the request. Hopefully we get a response with a token. And so this is my token that I will use for all my other requests. So what I want to do is just copy that. Typically you would put this into your script, right? And so now if I go back to the objectives of DevNet Associate, what I need to do is get a list of network devices from DNA Center. So I will go back to the documentation for the API, and if we scroll down on the left navigation, there is a section for devices, and conveniently there is get device list. So here we see that this operation is get device list, and it returns a list of network devices based on filter criteria. So we can set a filter with the query parameters, but what we're going to do is take this string here and add that to the end of our host name. If I go back to Postman, I will create a new a get request here. What I want to remember is in the header section, we want to add our token. So I'll paste the token into the value field. And in the key field, we want to type in X auth token. All right. So then in our request URL field, I'm going to copy the host name for DNA Center, which is sandboxdnac.cisco.com. And then copy the URL for my get device list request. All right, so there we go. We are going to do a get request and get a list of network devices within my sandbox, my DNA Center Sandbox. This is the URL structure, and you can see I'm querying network device, whereas in my other request, which was a post request, I was getting a token, an authentication token. So here in my new request, we're doing a get request for network devices, and I have in my headers my token. I will click on send, and here we have a response back in JSON format. It's been prettified for us within Postman, and you can see it says here response, and here are some host names for devices. We got 1, 2, and 3. A switch. Not sure how many there are, just 3. All right, so what can we do with this? From here, we've been interfacing with the API, but we can now build out a Python script, for example. So here on this right side, I'm going to click on code. So it's already giving me the Python requests code that I can just copy, which I will then paste into my Atom text editor. Here we're importing a library called requests. We have a URL, which is making the same URL that we used in Postman to query the network device list. And then we're going to add the headers, which includes my token. And here's my token, pretty long token. And this is where we use a request module to use the get request to the URL that we have defined, and it's passing the headers. And whatever the response is, it will place it into this variable called response. And then it will print out the response. So if I save this, I can then open this up in terminal and show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's terminal. I'm going to run Python 3 against my script name, which is up here, and I will hit enter. And so you can see, because I have not, or the certificate that is being used on this sandbox is not a valid certificate. There's an SSL error. It's not using a signed certificate. So what we need to do is go back to the script, and in the requests section here, I'm just going to type in verify equals false, because I don't want to verify this certificate. So now if I run the script again, I then get that same SSL warning. But here you can see I'm getting the response back. Now it's not easy to read, right? So that's hard to pick out. But we have gotten a list of the network devices from the DNA Center Sandbox. But I want to make it look nicer. Right, so I do know that I want to do this in basically read the JSON format. So I'm going to import the JSON module. And instead of just printing this out, I'll remove that, and I'll take the response. And what we want to do is we'll call it raw data. And I will use a JSON module to deserialize the response and turn it into a Python object. And we can see what this object is by using the type module. And so I will print that out, and let's see if that works. Rerun that. So you can see now it is a dictionary. All right, we've taken the response and deserialized it into a Python object, and got some devices going off here. We've turned it into a Python object, which is now a dictionary. So actually, if I wanted to print this out, we can see that it is in fact a dictionary. So if I scroll up, you can see right here, this is the key, and this is the value, which contains all the hosts and other host details as well. So what I want to do is just get out the host name, for example, right? So I'm looking at this, and I can see there's a host name. I just want to get out a host name and dump out the list of hosts. But we need to get the data out of this dictionary. From what I've been learning with Python, what I could do is create a new variable, and let's just put the value. We'll call out the dictionary key of is it response? Let's go back there. We'll call this key, and the value will get put into this variable here. And we can then see what that looks like. Actually, let me show you what it ends up looking like. So we'll see what type, data type this is, right? What do you guys think that is? It's a list. All right, so now we have a list, and if we take this, we can then see the contents of that list. There is our list. You can see this is a list, and now it doesn't say response. It's not a dictionary, it's a list. So it's a list of items is the key value. Here's a key and another value. I want the key host name, and I want it to dump the value of whatever the host name is. Now I'll take this and create a for loop. I'm going to iterate through this list like I've done in my previous video. So we'll say for device in devices, right? So I'm making this variable, and I want to say for each device in this list, which is this variable, we'll say print, and then I will say host name, and we'll create a format string here. Format, we'll call device, and we want host name. Let's see if that works. We should just see a list of host names. And there you go. So ignore this, just a SSL warning, but you can see now I've gone, we have now a list of each host name of the network device that is in DNA Center. We've gone from having just this raw output here, then converting that to a Python object, which ended up being a dictionary, right? So here we ended up having a dictionary, and you can see there's the key of response, and in that response, the values is this list. And I took out the contents of that list and put it in its own variable so I can iterate through it with a for loop. And so here is the for loop. So here I am creating that dictionary and then creating that list, putting the contents, the value of response into this variable, which I then iterate through that with a for loop and print out where I'm looking at for the key host name and printing out the actual host name. And so that's when we end up with this. So there you go. That is my way of getting through the DevNet Associate objective of using DNA Center to construct a Python script to get a list of network devices in DNA Center using the API. So I hope you guys found that useful. Take a look at the DevNet resources and try this out for yourself. And if you found it useful and educational, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to my channel. I'll be adding additional DevNet Associate videos as I relearn everything that I did learn to take the exam, and now I'm just getting more into Python again and diving into different Cisco products in order to understand Python a little bit more and network automation, and we'll see what we can get with maybe some integrations in the future. So I want to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one.